Hello everybody, welcome to episode 236 of Show Fever. Today we'll be going over chapter 17 of Haunted Peak, entitled Between Men. So this chapter starts off with us getting a flashback to when Roka and Momiji first, became boyfriend and girlfriend, and they started dating. And we see that this only began because a friend of Momoji's, I can't remember exactly what her name was, but, what was her name? Well, that doesn't really matter. She had a crush on this dude named Takahashi. Now, Takahashi did not reciprocate that crush, but he had a crush on Momiji. So, ultimately, Momiji ended up revealing to her friend that she, in fact, didn't have a crush on Takahashi, but she liked Roka. So, this led to the friend ultimately telling Roka that Momiji liked him so that Roka would get with Momiji, hopefully. And then she could have Takahashi all to herself. So, we see as this happens, and they kind of ultimately discuss getting together. And also we see as Momiji ends up mentioning about how Miko kind of scares her, and getting this relationship will possibly discourage Miko from wanting to be in a relationship with her, and then lead to him realizing, they're just friends. That's her goal in all this. She wants Miko to still be there as her friend, but she doesn't want to hurt him by just telling him no, so she's going to go through this path. So this did improve my image of Momiji. Momiji is, looking a little bit better here, but I need to watch my words, because last video I said, Roka, he's a good guy, he's goated. And then we get back to the present time where we see as the same event plays out where she asks if she's too needy, and Roka goes, of course not, looking very gentlemanly here. And then we get to see the line of, but of course that's not what I think, women are just so pathetic. Okay, Roka, now you can no longer be my favorite character, because holy smokes, I guess it's gonna have to be Ebihara or something like that, because bro's just ultimately dissing on women here. So then we get another flashback when we see when Miko and Roka were kind of talking one day. See, Roka's talking about how this upperclassman girl had her eyes on him for a while, and he ultimately ended up getting with her because he couldn't figure out how to say no. And Miko calls him out for this. He's like, that's kind of like what something a groomer would do. And he's like, you're just gonna let women walk all over your entire life. And Roka was like, huh? And Miko's like, just because you're such a ladies' man, I would never understand that. So we see as Miko's probably quite jealous here, and he's trying to make Roka feel bad about what's going on here. So then we end up going to the modern day once more, where we see as Miko kind of thinking about what he should do about Mayu. He just wants to meet Ebihara on his own, so they can kind of talk about this and figure out what to do with Mayu. And on his way along, we see as he ultimately ends up running with Roka. And Miko is kind of confused. He's like, did Momiji just send you here to do this? But Roka's like, no, we're friends. I want to talk to you about what's been going on and everything that's happening. So we see then Miko ultimately ends up breaking. He ends up giving Roka the whole spiel. He's like, I'm up here meeting with Ebihara, but Mayu's trying to, the woman from the Susono Inn, is trying to build a block between us and build a boundary between this relationship that we've built. And he's like, I'm up here helping this dude with this cabin, and we both have our problems, and because of this, we can exist man to man and have this bond, which I haven't felt with anyone else, or I guess created with anyone else. It's a very manly connection. And so we see as he kind of talks about this and fully explains it to Roka, and he's like, adios, I'm headed off. And then Roka thinks to himself, that does sound quite nice. So we might get another individual up on the Haunted Peak to help Ebihara build his cabin. So this is interesting, because this could possibly promote my theory of Ebihara really just being a spirit of fellowship or something like that, but also the inclusion of Mayu now sowing dissension within, not necessarily dissension, but displeasure within Roka, not Roka, but Miko, is kind of antithetical to that theory, but I don't really know how to think on it anymore. But this chapter was good because we did get more character development of Roka, though it was bad development, and we did get more character development of Momiji, which is good because we see a lot of female characters in this story kind of get downtrodden a bit and disgraced in a way. However, Momiji looks good here because she was wanting to maintain her friendship and maintain, the well-being of Miko without, having to be with him. And that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly reasonable and all that. And Miko does get a bad rap, but not necessarily a bad rap. He just performs, I not necessarily perform badly, but he acts very poorly in this chapter because we see, once again, he kind of tries to lower Roka down and acts just kind of weird around women and stuff like that. So it is kind of odd. And I guess we'll just see where this plays out. Now, I think Roka will probably end up going up on the mountain somehow, or he may just end up inquiring about it to Miko a little more. So I'm really excited to see where this goes in the next chapter. We do have a 2-week break, which is going to suck, but luckily it didn't really end on a cliffhanger. So we won't have to worry about, like, it didn't end on, like, when Ebihara was getting stabbed himself with the fork or something like that, which is probably like, the most tense, I guess, split between chapters that we've seen so far. But yeah, so really ready to see where that plays out, and that's all it really was for Chapter 17 of Haunted Peak, entitled Between Men. That's all I really have for episode 236 of Shelf Review. So, thank you very much for watching.